So there's just a few other questions. We'll just quickly wrap up with these. Does this choice empower me or disempower me? And that goes back to the self and back to like that sort of 0 to 100. Is this something that you're doing out of selflessness, which is just selfish, or pure selfishness? That's where I give that assignment of on a 0 to 100. I ask clients to like rate how much self is in that decision making or in that example. Like how much self are they really acting from? Is it an act of self-sabotage or self-love? Most of us are usually self-sabotaging because what we're doing, remember how I talked about yesterday, the loyalty card at Costco, that you got this loyalty card for your parents and your family, whether it's your ancestry that you may not know anything about. We were talking about a moment ago, I didn't realize the Nazi and all of that. There's a loyalty to that story. So when we are loyal to those stories, that's self-sabotage. And most of us will perpetuate. The cycle of the mind is to perpetuate that self-sabotage and keep that story sort of alive and well. To choose self-love is very difficult.
Yeah.
To choose self-love is very difficult because we have not had unconditional love demonstrated to us in a human form. Remember when we have that separation from that cosmic intelligence, we are wounded. And so we don't choose self-love. That's why our clients don't do the practices that are good for them. That's why we don't do the practices that are good for us. So we know that we're sick, we don't rest. We don't like our job, we don't leave. We're in a toxic relationship, we stay. Choosing self-love, it's counterintuitive. You would think that everybody would choose self-love. We don't. Is this an act of faith or fear, what we talked about before? If you are controlling or trying to control, then you're in fear. When you surrender and have more sort of faith that things are going to work out. Now this is not easy. The mind doesn't allow for this. This is a practice. And if you can surrender one time in the day, you're ahead of the game, you know? So these are just drops in the bucket. And my favorite, are you choosing from your divinity or from your humanity? The divinity from your highest self or your humanity, your lowest self. And again, this is not about only choosing from your divinity. That's impossible. But trying to achieve this balance. And when we talk about the duality of the mind, we'll do a little activity with this idea of balance. So these are questions that you can ask. These are questions that you can give your clients. You can just give them one question and have them that month in between consults, either do a cup with like the pennies and the question so that they have a visual representation. So it's ways to get you thinking differently than how we normally think. So, what are the qualities of the mind? God bless you. Yeah.
Thank you.
The first quality of the mind is anutva. And this means that the mind is atomic in nature. This is like the minuteness and the tininess, if you will. If you remember in the Sri Yantra, I told you that there's this little dot that's bindi, that is that thought that then creates all of this. Mm-hmm. Okay? Where do we find this in our body? We talked about this yesterday. Mano Baja Strota. We're going to do the Mano Maya Kosha next weekend when we do the koshas. But it's in the cell. It's like an atom. So do you know where atom, the term atom got its name from?
No, atom? Like
A-T-O-M, atom, is the smallest particle, right? Mm-hmm. It got its name from Adam, the first man. Because it's that first thought. Wow. It is that smallness of whatever it is. You think you have fleeting moments of thought. You think that you're just, oh my God, this traffic sucks. Or, oh my, every single one of those thoughts is recorded in the Akasha. Every every single thought. That's why we have the world we have. I had a client. She's one of my very dear clients, but the first session she ever came. Very, very wealthy, powerful woman in Washington. But she loves the animals. She is like obsessed with animals, and she takes care of animals, and she feeds a gazillion animals, and she's got this land for the animals. And she's like, why is there so much pain in the world? Why are all these animals getting hurt? And people too, but her thing is really the animals. And we started going, we don't have to do the past life stuff, it just happened to come up in our session. Past life after past life, where she was indeed this perpetrator. And it's like, you now are trying to repair from the damage that you've done in the past. But this world is representative of all of the damage that our thoughts had that it created this reality. And that's why it takes every single person to be healthy, meaning balanced mind, body, and spirit. Every single person to be living in their self, in their 48 to 52, in order for this to change. That's the only solution. Because the moment we are having thoughts that are incongruent with our feelings and our behaviors, etc., then this continues. That's why we don't see, change happens, but we're seeing the consistent abuses and so forth. So we are, in essence, trying to repair the damage as we gain awareness from the damaging thoughts. So are you guys familiar with Ho'oponopono?
Yes.
Okay, Ho'oponopono is a really powerful, you never heard of that? Okay. It's a true story, you can Google it. Many years ago in Hawaii, there was this really, really bad mental hospital, like where all the rapists and pedophiles and everything were housed. And no one in the staff would stay. The therapist wouldn't stay, there was a lot of turnover. So there was this doctor guy, Huenlon or something, and he responded to the ad, and he told them in the interview, I'll take the job, but under two conditions. I never touch a patient, never see a patient, and you let me do what I need to do. They were so desperate, they said, whatevs, get the job. So he sat in his office day in and day out with all of the files, and he would take the files and he would pray over them, and he would do this act of Ho'oponopono. And it's 4 sentences. Mm-hmm. Thank you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you. Thank you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you. Day in, day out, hour after hour. Within 4 years, all of the inmates or patients were healthy, and they were sent home, and they closed down the hospital. Mm-hmm. This is such a powerful therapy, and it's so simple, because it shifts you into a high vibration in your mind. So if I'm like talking to my husband, and not so much now, but earlier years where I would get agitated really easily, I would Ho'oponopono and listen to him. He would be like, are you Ho'oponoponoing me? I'd be, yes, because he would notice that like impulsive, dramatic, aggressive Francis wasn't, and it was the use of that. But the key thing there, besides the gratitude, besides the love, please forgive me. Mm-hmm. Please forgive me, because he understood that he was responsible for every single one of those inmates, that his thoughts created that person who was sick. We don't take that level of responsibility in our life. We don't. We live in victim. We blame. We think someone's doing something to us. We not only have created the chaos and the conflict in our own life, we have created the mess that is this earth. And it's very easy to sit back and say, oh, and Trump, and oh, and North Korea, and that, to me, personally, is the most powerful part of that prayer. Please forgive me. It is the recognition that I participated in all of this, and in every ounce of suffering that is in this earth. There's this 8-part interview with him, Hugh Lawn, I think is his name, on YouTube. So we have to shift from victim mentality and take personal responsibility. That's my life's motto, those 3 words, TPR. And take personal responsibility for every single thing that has happened to us and happening to us. If you can't go as far as to say, I'm culpable for the world's problems, fine. But take care of this. And that is the shift that needs to happen. And that's the truth. And that's why it's the stool of the pillar of health, the definition of health, of why we need truth in our life. That's the layer of truth. So in every single cell, that anutva, that atomic sized particle of the mind is in every cell. So your body, whether it's the wrinkle, whether it's the toe that has a little, mole on it, whatever, is telling you every single thing that's at the atomic level of your thoughts. Everything. So in my house, we're obsessed with what does this mean? And my daughter and I, and even my husband and my kids have kind of jumped in on the game. So my daughter, I have a bruise, what does it mean? Oh, what is it? We're obsessed. So, a few weeks ago, my husband hits his toe on the patio. He was cleaning something outside. And he says to me the next week, he gets bruised and he breaks his little baby toe. And he's like, so what does it mean to break the baby? And he doesn't ask too much because it's like, I guess he doesn't want to know or whatever. And I said, well, that little piggy stayed home. Isn't that the story we were all told? And the 2 nights before or something, we had gotten into this argument about going out or staying home or something like that. So I was like, this little piggy stayed home. So like, I brought it to like a joking manner, but this is the earth element. This toe is the earth element. This is the toe of desire. This is a toe of secrets. Our pinky and our toe, our baby toes are the secrets. And it's the earth, and it's it has a function and stability like the other toes. But so we were joking about that. But in that story, in that nursery rhyme, you already see what's going on and why that person hurt their toe. He got the message. He knew what we were talking about. But it's that precise. I have a friend whose toes, she hates her toes because she's got like these calluses like on her toes. So she's funny because she'll buy bows and stuff and she'll put them on the sandals so that the bow covers the calluses and you just see her toes. Mm-hmm. So I was talking to her the other day and I was like, so tell me about this. And she's like, I know why I have this. I said, why? She's like, because my mother didn't want me to be like on drill team or something when I was in middle school or high school. And she went every day after school. Her mom was working, so her mom never knew. And then they were going to have like the championship or something, and they had to buy the uniform. And she had no money, and her mother said, nope, you did this against my will, figure it out. So I don't know if it was other parents or whatever on the drill team donated money for costumes and shoes and stuff. And the stuff she got, her shoes, the shoes that they gave her was one size too small. So her feet were like this for all of that championship. She goes, that's from that. And I said, nope, that is your punishment that you disobeyed your mother. How dare you? And for the rest of your life, you will have ugly toes to remind you that you disobeyed your mother. That is the self-betrayal. That is the self-punishment. That is what we do. So the body, no matter what, the client, ask the client, oh, how'd you get that bruise? Oh, and you can see it all unravel. Doesn't matter what story, you're going to start hearing what they're really saying. So the mind is atomic. It's very, very, very minute, like the atom. You can't see it, right? But it's in every cell. And then the way you see it is the accumulated effects of whatever presents in the body. Ikatva. Okay, how many of you multitask? Raina's the only one who doesn't multitask?
At work I do.
There's no such thing as multitasking.
I know it.
Ikatva is you can only do one thing at once.
You just slice it in real small pieces.
Yeah, so if I'm this and here, and I think I'm multitasking, but I'm not. The mind can only focus on one thing, and that's the beauty of meditation. If you really sit as the observer and observe your thoughts, you see the lion, then it goes away, and then you see the tiger, and then you see your light bill, and then you see your ex-boyfriend, and then you see your work list that you have to do that day. But it's just one thing at a time. And you replace it with the next, and you replace it with the next. So this idea of multitasking is not a truth. That's why we mess up. That's why we make so many mistakes. That's why people die when they text and drive. The mind is single focused. So we think that we're doing more than one thing at once. And why is it single focused? Because the intention is that we be present. The intention is that we're here in the now with you. That's called Subda. I am here now. Ram Dass has this beautiful book. It's called Be Here Now. There are two book titles that to me are amazing. That, Be Here Now. That sums up a philosophy of life. Be here now. What you're doing, do it as you're doing it with that person. That is such an amazing way to live. When I'm in the records, I have to be that way. There can be no other thing than the person in front of me. They say that Bill Clinton, one of the reasons that Bill Clinton is so popular and so charismatic is that he makes you feel like you're the only person in the room when you're with him. That is amazing because you're really with that person. At that moment, that is all that matters. That is all that matters. And the other one is Byron Katie. Byron Katie has a book that's called Accepting What Is. Accepting What Is or Loving What Is? I think it's Accepting What Is. And one of the things that she has this thing called these questions, these 4 questions. And one of the questions is that fear, or is that comment, or is that thought true at this exact moment? Who worries about money? Okay. What's your fear around money?
Not to have any.
Okay. Is that true at this exact moment? At this moment, that is not true. She's got money in the bank, she's got food. That's being here now. Oh, it's loving what is.
Loving?
Yeah, loving what is. So, if we lived really in that premise, our life would be different. And that is the quality of the mind. But we think, because if we're more valuable, if we have 10 things going on at once, if we're answering 5 phone calls, years ago, I was driving and I saw these 2 people on cell phones in their car. I mean, years, I'm talking, I was probably...
Phones like this.
Yeah, no, they weren't that big, but they were definitely like the flippy ones. I think it was the stage right after that one. And I was driving and I was like, oh my God, look at these 2 people. They're in a car. They're having 2 separate conversations with 2. No, who doesn't do that nowadays? How many times have I not caught a glimpse of that happening in my own car? You know, at 30 it was different. I guess I don't even know what kind of phone I had or whatever.
Go to a restaurant and see how many people are not talking, they're all looking at their own phones.
Right? And so yesterday I finished seeing that movie, A Family Man. Oh my God. Killed me. But that idea of I have to be on the phone, or I have to be this, or I have to be answering the thing, or I have to be, that's going to make me valuable, that's going to be a word. Those are the validation needs. You see that in the wound, I'm not of worth. So when you see people like that. But what is more valuable than just making eye contact and listening and hearing you and seeing you? 5 minutes of that. That's health. For the person and for you, because that means that if you can sustain that for 5 minutes, that you're gonna give that to yourself, because if there is no other, you are giving that to yourself in that moment. And that's what I love about my work, is that I have no choice. I won't be connected if I'm not in this Sutta state, if I'm not in this be here now state. You know? And so we have that capacity, but because of unmet needs and lack and low self-worth and self-betrayal and family patterns, we don't allow it. We don't allow it. And that movie, what I loved was just the priority of work over this sick child. Like, when he finally got it, then he could make a change. But without the awareness, for instance, there is no multitasking. You tell that to a client, that might be all they need to hear in a session. That piece of awareness. So education and awareness isn't enough for behavior change, but it's the beginning, it's the first sort of drop. So that multitasking idea is non-existent.
So the definition for a kama is?
Oh, that it's just single focused.
Single.
Yeah. You can only focus on one thing at once. So if you stop, Sonia's walking in New York by the pizza shop, which is she doing first with the pizza? When you would get close to the pizza shop, what would happen? What senses?
The smell.
The smell was first.
Big sign of pizza.
She smelled it and then she tasted it.
That was in New York?
So, I know, I'm already transported there. Let's go to atendria. Atendria means that the mind is beyond the sense organs. We are drawn in, okay, ubandendriya, with the sense organs, but it's actually beyond. This is why we try to connect to that silence. That is called, I know I had it written somewhere, Brahmari with full Shanmukhi Mudra. That's the name of that. I learned that in this Kriya Yoga training I did many, many years ago. And that's one of the reasons that they have you do that. It's part of their practice, is so that you can just hear like sort of the hum of the soul when you can kind of disconnect. So the mind is beyond the sense organs. That's how we do our inner work. We have to get beyond all of that. But we're so enamored with all of the sensory stuff that who has time?
It's like this.
Like, okay, we can all do it. So press down your ears with your thumbs. And your
Now we
index
can't hear what
fingers
you're doing.
lightly over your eyes.
Now we can't hear what you're saying.
You gotta start with the other spots, because if we cover our ears, we can't hear the rest of the stuff.
Oh, okay, so index finger
So cute.
in the eyes, your middle finger in your nostril, and then your mouth, your ring finger, and then you can do your thumbs. And just sit with that for a few seconds and hear the inner silence.
Peaceful. Finger up my brain.
But when you, I mean, that's just one technique, but when you get to that place, it's peaceful.
Yes.
It's like peaceful. Yesterday I had a friend of mine say, I want to run away. I just want to run away and escape. That right there can disconnect you. That can be a form of running away with.
They make a
all
whole
wanna
movie
run
about
away.
that, altered states.
Oh, really? What is that? Tell me. I love altered states.
Altered States is a movie from like the 60s or 70s. A guy goes into one of those deprivation tanks with water where you're floating in salt water, and
Okay.
it's totally dark, no sound, or maybe it was white noise, one of the two.
Okay, because I know they have like these white noise sound chambers, I think in John Hopkins.
Yeah, if you
And they've
search
done some
Altered
research.
States, it's a movie from like the 60s or 70s, and this guy keeps going into the tank for longer and longer, and time will stop for him. Because,
Well, and that's the thing, you're absolutely right. You know, this is the only plane where time exists. Saturn, the symbol, that glyph of Saturn is actually time. Okay? That is why it rules death. When does death begin?
time of birth, well, time of conception, actually.
Well, but the moment you're birthed, the moment you take that first breath, you're already dying in this body. We know the soul doesn't die. And when we have these moments, these pauses, when we hold the breath, when we're doing breath work, you're actually slowing things down because you leave this sort of consciousness. So when I make a comment of I love altered states of consciousness, I'm not a person who gets high or drunk or anything like that. The running joke in my family is that I'm always high because I'm constantly in this state. So it's like I'm immune to these other things, like because I'm constantly there. My husband's just like, "What? You're always high." Because I explain to him like what I see and what I experience and how I connect dots. I hear one word, I mean, and you see, I can just this whole thing just. So, but I love these therapies that allow people to experience an altered state because it lets them get beyond this. So I have this client, he's a young kid, he's 19, 20 now, and he was a heroin addict. And his last sort of, thing with heroin, they found him in a pool of blood, and his mom, calls me, she's like, should I take him to this thing in, I think it was Mexico or something. And it's to do what's called Ibogaine. Ibogaine is where they take this toad, and the thing on the toad is like a hallucinogenic, and it's kind of like an ayahuasca experience.
Oh, wow.
And he did that, and then for like a month, I think they keep him like in the desert and, different spiritual therapies, works with shamans, all these things. And then he and I had a session after he got back home. And I'm all for, I don't do them because I don't think I need them. I have a different way to connect. But I think that if that's a way that a client, you don't judge it. You encourage and support whatever the client is being done to do. Remember, there's no new thought. This might have been something that they had a shamanic experience in a past life. Like, who are you, You educate, you instruct, you tell them, or you learn about things. So this is what happened with this kid. So he's telling me everything that he experienced. But his tendency is to escape from this world. This kid does not feel part of this world. He feels like an alien. And so his addiction with drugs had to do with that escapism. And that's usually, it's very much, delusion and escapism and things like that, and why people engage in those behaviors. And so after he has this experience with the Ibogaine, he's back to having to solve the problem of, I'm 20 years old and I have a fight with my girlfriend. Those experiences are not anything that's going to help you, or you're not holier than thou, you're not more what it gives you is it gives you access in that moment to that Purusha. In that experience, where you're in the ayahuasca, where you're in the Ibogaine, where you're in, for some people it's marijuana, but their experience is in the unity. They're experiencing the unity so that they know it exists, but they still need to come and live in this dual world. That's the conflict. So people, I have a friend who does ayahuasca like on a monthly basis. It's almost, in my opinion, almost to an addictive sort of thing. Now she goes back home and she does her inner work, but it's almost like a reliance, and that's just my own judgment, and I've looked at that, I recognize it. It's almost like a reliance on this thing, like to remind me that I'm God, to remind me that I'm this cosmic consciousness, and now I can come and live in the daily world. To each their own, but those are just tools and resources, just like yoga, just like meditation, to remind you that you are that. But you still must live in this earth. There's a philosopher by the name of Gurdjieff, G.I. Gurdjieff. He was an Armenian mystic. And he had a therapy called, or a philosophy of life called the fourth way. And I never remember the first three ways, but one was the way of the fakir. The fakir was back in like the olden days where they would take the belts and beat themselves when they did sin. Very like Christian type of thing. There's the way of the monk, where you live in, the cave or the monastery, and then there's another way, and I don't remember exactly what it is, and then there's the fourth way, and that's where we are now. The fourth way, like Gurdjieff would explain, is where you learn all of these spiritual principles and you put it in I-95, and you put it with your marriage, and you put it with your clients, and in the hospital, and you put it with your patients. Living this philosophy, living that God principle, living that I am that Satchitananda principle in your daily life. We are not escaping. So people that are very much drawn to those sorts of altered states of consciousness, unless they bring that knowledge, that inner wisdom of that God, whether it's done like this or whether it's done like this, you need to bring it into the everyday. And that's what I think is not being communicated in a lot of these therapies. And so when I spoke to this kid, and he had had this experience, he had this month-long counseling and stuff like that, and I had to bring him down. I'm like, you are still in a human body. And you still need to figure out what you're going to do when you fight with your girlfriend and not escape. So those tools are useful to connect people with that first disconnection that we talked about yesterday. But you still have to trickle down to the earth. You still have to trickle down to the earth. So that's part of our responsibility when people will come, because we're viewed as spiritual therapists and spiritual counselors. Hey, what do you think about? Great, whatever your views are, you have your own things. If you say yay or nay or whatever, but great, have it. But remember, you still have to bring that learned experience to your day, to your life, to this. So we'll talk about the duality in a minute. So atendria is this idea that the mind is beyond the sense organs. We just get stuck. We just get stuck there. But there is a mind, a higher mind. Like I told you yesterday when I don't want to ask my husband to build the house, I was able to get past that and say, yes, help. That's the higher mind. That's the little angel that we see, the devil and the angel. So even though every hole and orifice we have is a way that, we're kind of bling, 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 shiny, 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 we can shut that down. But most people just don't have the practice and the tools to do that. But it's very much possible. The mind is constantly moving. There is no stillness. You cannot know your true self with a capital S if you do not quiet your mind. It is impossible. And this is why we meditate. When we meditate, what we're doing is we are observing the thoughts, the quality of the thoughts. What happens when you meditate? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you know? What informs you, Carolina? Because you said yesterday that you've been meditating for a long time.
Oh, well, not that long.
Well, that your period of time
getting
is
better. I'm able to relax, which is something that I didn't do before, because I'm always on the go. But I'm able to look at things through a very different perspective after I meditate. After being, still, I'm able to look at myself and know why. I'm more aware, is the correct term, of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. That's what meditation is helping.
When you meditate, not the guided meditations, but just the still meditations, are you seeing things, or how do you know, like, your thoughts?
Recently, what I see is colors, lights. That's all I see.
Okay.
Like a yellow or white light.
Okay. So, like in TM, when you observe your thoughts, so like I said before, oh, it's a lion. You let the lion go. Oh, it's a tiger. Oh, there's my ex-boyfriend. What that does is it allows you to observe quality of your thoughts. My dream, this will never exist, but this is my dream. If I can invent something, I would invent this. A machine that at the end of the day, like, you know when you do a
Stenograph.
no, what's that calculator thing the accountants use, that the paper comes out? And it has, okay, that are all of our thoughts that we have for the whole entire day would be like on a ribbon of paper. And then we can
Something.
look at, wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's my dream. Because if we can see that, then we can understand not only the body, the car, everything, right? It would be amazing. So that's one of the purposes in meditation. If you observe the quality of the thoughts, if the thoughts are consistently taking you to the fight that you had with your boyfriend and your light bill and your crash and oh my God, I hate my boss, and you can just observe that in that stillness, then you can understand a little bit more of why things are the way they are in your life. But we need stillness for that. And most people, and that's a practice cultivated. You're not supposed to have no thought that's not going to be possible for long periods of time, because the nature of the mind is to think and not be still. But if you can at least observe that, then you can start seeing, oh, look where all my focus goes. There's this saying where the energy flows, where the mind goes, the energy flows. That's what it is. So when you can start seeing, oh, I'm thinking about work, oh, I think about work, oh, I can't get work. You wonder why your home life is a wreck. Well, if all your energy is being focused in that area, then the opposite area is lacking. That's one of the beautiful things about astrology. When we take your charts, I'm just going to have you tell me where your eye goes. Because it's a picture of you, it's a physical representation of you. Where does your eye go? I remember vaguely from your chart that in the 7th you have like a cluster of stuff. My eye went there. Therefore, that person's energy has to go to that section of their life. So just knowing nothing, just by looking at the picture, you can already see where the person's mind is going. And if it's so heavily populated like yours in the 2nd and the 8th, that has to be a focus. That has to be a focus. Because the whole chart is that. Or it's so heavy down here, well, that means up here the person is imbalanced. So just from the visual, not knowing anything, just a picture. If I went here and drew a bunch of circles over here and nothing over there, you'd be like, well, we need balance over there. So we're walking around like this in our minds, and the meditative and the quality of the thoughts would indicate that. So it's just another practice in the meditation so that we can see where the thought flows, and that's where our energy in our life is going. And then that again takes us out of victim, explains why we're focused on what we're focused on, why we live the life we have. Okay, dualistic. All matter is dualistic. The mind is matter, just more subtle. The mind is constantly moving between opposites. This is a law. If you looked up the Kabbalion, there is a law, a spiritual law, called the law of the pendulum. I told you guys yesterday that the trick, this is the whole trick of it, is to try to live in this world unified in your mind, body, and spirit, but but understanding that the world is dual. That is the sum up. How do you get off the Moses mountain with the 10 commandments but still wash the feet of your disciples rather than yelling at them? If we do not understand and accept the world is dual, we're not going to be able to live in this world. That's why when I tell you if you're victim, you're perpetrator, if you have good qualities on that paper, you have to look at the bad. But we don't do this. We don't accept it. This is probably our number one sort of frustration, is that the world is dual. We don't want to accept that because our nature, what is our nature? What is our true nature? Our true nature is not dual. Our true nature is unified. We come from source, that one point, that one bindi, that purusha. So what we're rejecting is the world. We're rejecting the humanity. Humanity is always dual. Divinity is always united. So how do I live in this world unified, but required to be a dual, two-faced, good, bad, light, dark, yin-yang person? Can you see how that's the conundrum that we have? So there's a spiritual law called the law of the pendulum, and it says that every single thing has basically a 0 to 100. It's the all or none principle. Every single thing. So, write down on the piece of paper something that you absolutely love or absolutely hate. It could be a quality, a person, a
Both
food.
or one?
No,
or the
one,
other?
just one. If you love it, love it, love it, put it under positive. If you hate it, hate it, hate it, put it on the negative.
About yourself?
Yeah, about
Anything?
anything, whatever.
Chips.
Did you say chips?
Yeah.
You hate chips?
No, she loves chips, Carolina. She used to eat them at lunch.
You don't eat them anymore?
I still eat them, yes.
That's
Can't let it go yet.
Well, there's the judgment.
Does it have to be hate?
Like, I hate, like, red peppers or something like that? Or hate, like, a quality in a person?
Yeah. Hate.
It has to be all or none. So if that, write that.
It's
Because
extreme.
that's what you need to write. Whatever's coming up, that's what you need to write. I know. Because if you have an aversion to it that strong, you have it in you and you don't want to see it. Write it down, that's your healing.
I'm working hard on that one.
Well,
Can it be like a place?
sure. Everything's everything. Haven't you learned that yet? I don't know.
Everything means something, right?
Everything means something and it means the same thing and it takes you to your womb. So if all matter is dualistic and the mind is matter, even though it's subtle, the mind is dual. What is the spirit? Is the spirit dual?
No, it's uniform.
The spirit is not dual. It's unified. And this is where we have the conundrum. How can I live in this body that's dual and flawed, yet express myself in a divine form, like in the quote? You have to. That is our job. That is what we're here to do. I call it finding the divinity or expressing the divinity through my humanity. And it comes with acceptance. That's why we'll do this. Normally you would do a trait of someone. So in my book, in my model, and write this too, do both. Everyone have their thing that they love or hate? Okay. Now, beneath that, write a quality about one of your parents that you don't like.
This is gonna be.
One quality about one parent that you don't like,
I don't have any,
you don't have what?
any quality that I don't like.
Not true. Not true. Something.
Are we doing it on this paper
You don't remember? On the same page.
or not on this paper?
Yeah, that's for you. I mean, you don't have to write on that if you don't want to, but wherever you want to make your notes. Something, Marion. It could be the person's cookie, it could be they were selfish, their nails were too long, it doesn't have to be anything drastic, but something you didn't like about your parents. So much denial. I told you, I don't know why people keep coming back. I'm serious. Like, you're back for more? So, one of the main reasons why we dislike the duality is because we know that we are unified beings, that we are whole, that we come from this cosmic consciousness. So it's almost like counterintuitive. And most of the reasons that we self-betray, that we self-hate, that we don't take care of ourselves is because of this.
Lack of duality.
Right, we want to remember that we're united, but we cannot accept. This is a matter of acceptance that we are dual. This is the whole story of Jesus. Buddha. What did Buddha do? Buddha said, I ain't eating no rice. I'm gonna on my way to enlightenment. And then Buddha said, wake up, Buddha. Go get some rice, because you're going to die. Because you have a body, and if you don't feed that body, you ain't getting enlightened. So the lady brought him the bowl of rice, he ate it, and then he enlightened. The duality of the body, of the mind, I need food, contradicts with the Buddha knowing his true nature. When he was at odds, this is all of us, we are all Buddha, we are all Christ. They are just mythological examples, stories to explain ourselves. So if I know I am the Buddha, I am the enlightened one, why would I need rice? Why do I need to feed the matter? Because we're dual. And even though you understand your true nature, you still need to feed your flesh.
Yeah.
That is the entire story of Jesus. He is not God's only son. You're God's only son, and you're God's only son, and you're God's only son. That's your Jivatman. The Atman is the soul. The Jivatman is your particular spark of that big source. It's only in you. That can only be manifested like you. You are part of that big piece. My guides call it the big cookie dough, and that we're just the little chocolate chips from that big cookie dough in the sky, right? That big cosmic consciousness. So you're a chocolate chip, and you're a chocolate chip, and you're a chocolate chip. So your chocolate chip can only express as Jennifer, and yours can only express as Marion. That's why copying or comparing is ridiculous. Because no one else is like you. But the duality is, every single one of us is the same. It is the conundrum of all conundrums. And this is why we self-hate, and this is why we self-betray, this is why we do not self-accept. How can I be different and the same all at once? How can I be human and divine all at once? There's this great book called Marrow. It's written by Elizabeth Lessard. And she's the one who created the Omega Institute in New York. Amazing place. They have all the top spiritual teachers there, all the workshops. It's just amazing. She writes this book named Marrow, and she says that one of the times, I think she was in Thailand, and she was looking for like, in the street, like the food vendors. And I don't know if she wanted papaya or mango or something. And she would go to the people and go, "Oh, papaya," and the lady would go, "Same, but different." And she'd go to the next cart and ask for it, and same, but different. That's us. Same, but different. We're the same. We have hair, we have eyes, we have nose, we have a pancreas, we have a liver, but we're different because the Jivatman expression of you is different than my expression of the soul, of that greater cosmic consciousness. So I love that idea, same, but different. But that's the duality. And we as human beings cannot accept. So the story of Jesus, of God sends his only son. No. What did Jesus do? Just like Buddha. They recognized their human limitation and their God consciousness all in one lifetime. Well, it was an accumulation, but in the lifetime that we read about. That's what they did. That's what we're here to do. So the only way to understand why we self-betray and why we hurt ourselves and why we perpetuate these disturbing behaviors is to look at the duality. Because what you hate, or what you love, tells you where you're out of balance and where you still have not accepted your humanity. What'd you put, Raina?
I put peace and then anger and hatred.
Peace. Wait, what? You either love, or hate.
So I put peace on the love, and I put anger and hatred on the hate.
Okay, so you pick one. We're going to pick anger.
Okay.
Okay, so we have to pick anger. What did you put for your parents?
Righteousness.
Okay, so righteousness is a form of anger. So there's anger in you, in your subconscious, that either you don't know how to channel, or you beat yourself up and get angry when you do channel, or you suppress the hell out of your anger, and you swallow it. So there you have not accepted the duality that you can be this peaceful, loving being, source, that holds anger. So that's going to be a very big thing for you to process. If not, you're going to get sick.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you channel your anger? You swallow it?
I think it's just suppressed big time, yeah.
So you have to start letting your
I
anger
don't
have
deal
some
with it at
airtime.
all.
What?
Yeah, I don't deal with it at
Yeah.
all, I just
Yeah.
hide it, yeah.
So that's something that needs to come out. Anger, no emotion is useless. So I love Debbie Ford. Debbie Ford died at a very young age, unfortunately. She was a really cool lady. And she lived not too far from here. She was like an addict for many, many years, and then she had, her awakening, and she wrote a ton of books, and she's just phenomenal. So she calls these like unexpressed emotions, she would call them subpersonalities, and she would give them names. So that could be Angry Alice. The part of you don't want to deal with is Angry Alice. Well, what's the worst part of your body? What's the least part of your body you like?
My stomach.
Okay. If I told you to go back there and get a knife and cut off your stomach right now, would you do it? Why?
I don't like blood.
It would hurt and it would bleed.
Yeah.
But the mind is also matter. So why do you cut off the stomach, aka the anger? You don't think it hurts just as much? You don't think it bleeds just as much? It does. But because it's such subtle matter that we think we don't have to deal with on a daily basis, we suppress it, or we drink, or we eat, or we gamble, or we study too much, or we have sex too much, or whatever it is. That is the way that we deal with the mind, rather than cleaning it up and saying, oh my God, it's bleeding.
Yeah.
So that's the equivalent. So when you are suppressing in this case, that anger, you're just really hemorrhaging. It's gonna come out somewhere. So it's dangerous. So it's best to name the anger and start making friends with it. So there's two things. A great activity for these emotions that we're not comfortable with, this dual part of ourselves that we're not comfortable with, is to close your eyes and go into like a school bus. And imagine all of the parts of you. So Slutty Sue, Angry Alice, Procrastination Pam, whatever. And you just see them sitting all over the bus. And each day, to do this as a meditation daily, close your eyes, enter the bus, and see whomever pops up. And so take out Procrastination Pam, walk her off the bus, take her to a park bench and talk to her. And you ask that part of you, what do you need? And let it just answer. Don't judge what comes up. Ask Angry Alice, what does she need? And she will tell you. She might just say a hug. But let her respond. Anger is a warranted emotion. Anger has to do with validation, and anger has to do with movement. When you're angry, all of your energy goes to your extremities. You just want to run. You just want to That forces you to act. There have been accounts where mothers' children have been caught under a car and the mothers have lifted up. That is anger. Hell if my kid's going to die. Can you imagine what you could do if you channeled that anger? Forget answering an ad, you'd be running the spot. So when we don't let an emotion, because of the duality, because of the judgment, and it comes from our parents in this lifetime, it's not the origin of origins, but in this lifetime it's what we have to work with, we are actually not allowing our full expression of ourselves to exist, and worse, we're judging it. So we just chopped off our arm, in her case, her stomach. Because not one of you would say that you would chop off your ear, your nose, or your toes if you didn't like them. But you have no problems chopping off parts of your mind. And it's matter. You have to remember, mind is material. It's just subtle. Who else? Something you hate, something you like.
The arts and cruelty.
Cruelty. Cruelty in what sense?
In general, just like cruelty to animals, cruelty to one another.
What did you prefer your parents?
Manipulation and dictatorship.
So there's a real element here of freedom. When someone is cruel or they're captivated, like animals that are like in captivity, then that dictatorship. So how does that resonate in your life? Are you someone that needs to be totally free? No one can tell you what to do?
All the time. I hate when someone tells me what to do. Yeah. Like, I've had problems with that.
I hate when someone tells me. So what we see is, this is our true bondage. And this is a common one with people, freedom. If I have enough money, if I can be my own boss, I'm going to say what I want, I come and go as I please. That is another form of bondage. When we are on either side of the duality spectrum, all service, or hell, no one's going to tell me what to do, we are in bondage. We're not free. So being free is not about having all the money in the world, all the time in the world, waking up at the time that I want. No rules. Because first of all, the rules that you're living by are universal rules. You have universal laws. What are you going to tell God? You're going to tell the universe that you don't feel like it? Oh, no, today karma doesn't apply to me. But in our dual mind, as long as I don't have a boss, I don't have a husband, I don't have this, I can make my own schedule, I can wake up at whatever time, I'm free. But that's your form of bondage. I had that for many years. Not expressing yourself, or overly expressing yourself, another one that I had for many, many years. I told you, everything's a mirror. It's a bondage.
So what type of bondage?
It's a bondage that you're not free. You keep coming back into the body. The body is bonded